Hi guys and girls, Emma again. Welcome back to the spare room. Following on from my resolution to make a few more YouTube videos this year, I wanted to do an R&D, really an R&D video, which is probably a bit ambitious, but there's a few jobs that I'm working on here at the moment on the little LORCH lathe to get the thread cutting attachment up and running, and some electronic capabilities on it as well, and some guarding. So there's quite a few little jobs that are going on with the LORCH, and then probably 10-15 years on I'm going to do another coat of paint, tidy it up eventually. But I really wanted to get some of these bits done, and having an amazing housemate with the CNC lathe or CNC mill, there's an opportunity to make this little gearbox. Now the LLV anyway, and the I believe the later A1 and A2 and A3 lathes and even A4 lathes had this particular accessory as part of the thread cutting attachment for a couple of reasons. One is that if you're boring something, and you move this tool right inside or up to the centre line of the lathe, then anything that's off the centre here will touch on the chuck, which is a bit of a problem. So I've had this thread cutting attachment up and running, and we've sort of, it's a work in progress, and it's certainly nowhere near finished. But one of the limitations of it is you couldn't use it for internal threading, and you couldn't use it for any work in the forge-awl. So if you had something like casting, for example, something like this casting that you wanted to set up in the forge-awl and thread here, because the forge-awl is 6-inch diameter, you can't actually get this tool in here close enough to thread without this touching on your work. I had this sort of set up here, something like this, which is all well and good in the centre. I don't know if you see that with my hand, but it is too close here to actually do any good work. So the upshot, and I guess the outcome of it all is that I remembered back to this little gearbox, and it seemed like a lot of work to make one. But I'm going to sort of go through the design process. I started with, I guess, a drawing and a 3D model. Looks something like this, which is quite basic. And three little 3D printed gears, basically, to give you some idea. There's 2 of them there, but 3 of those. And sort of worked out the dimensions of it, but this is pretty ordinary and not really ideal. I had thought that I was going to put a dowel in there and use this bolt hole, but there's no support behind here, and there's a fair bit of force on there, so not really impressed with that as a system. Maybe if that bolt was in the other side, maybe that would work, but as it is, it doesn't really. So that's the place we started. From there, I thought, well, this is something we need to do, and Joe made a big offer to actually CNC machine a case for me. So the next part the next job really was to go through and to work out what we had and what parts we wanted to use and what we needed to do. I immediately got in and found a gear cutter and made 3 bronze gears. I think they're modular, I think they're 0.8, something like that. And they're cast bronze or cast gunmetal piece I had kicking around. So we sort of determined that this needed to be a bit bigger on the back, and I originally thought this probably needs a bush in the back here to support something like this, because this pin or this slot runs across a pin in the screw in the x-axis on the lathe, and it acts as a bearing on that end as well when you wind it. So we needed a shaft through there, and we needed clearance for these 2 bolts here. And this is a later version, because the early version, have a look here, I printed a lot of these. The early version has quite deep holes here, and this one never had. The idea was to put a screw in each end, and we've changed that to 4 screws, which I think is much nicer. And this one also had a hole through there, and there's no support here, and there's nothing to stop. Basically, no, it's just no support on this end. So we ditched that one, and this has got much shallower bolt holes, you notice. So the idea was going to be that we're going to get like a Phillips head screw like that sits down in nice and neat. That gives us a bit more meat in here. But there's been another change since then. So this is about Mark 4 or Mark 5 or Mark 6 or something. We've had quite a few prototypes before we got to this stage. But at this point, that's starting to look something like. There's another prototype that's almost the same, a little bit different. This one's still got it's an earlier one that's still got provision for a dowel pin there that we decided against. So, of course, this gives us a step file and an STL, so we 3D print each itineration until we get one that actually works. And this is the piece with the slot in it that fits the lathe, and this is what we were actually driving the power feed off, or the eccentric, the universal joint rod was actually, this drive shaft was actually driving on this with a ball detent in each of these grooves. So you've got 2 positions, a locked one on the clutch and an unlocked one back here. So that was the original version, and there was a screw down through the end to lock it on the end of the shaft. It's all very well, but it's a little bit close, like we've already talked about. So we ditched that and thought, maybe we could use that. So one shaft become one shaft, which set the thickness here and gave us some sort of an idea of the bore of the shaft, the gear. So we made a gear here that fits on there with a slot in it. See, lines up. And if we look at the aluminium one that Joe's made, which is a bit nice. There's a scratch on there where the gear's been running, so there's obviously, this gear's never had a bush in there, so that's my fault. We'll clean that up. But this one, runs in a bush, and that's only a 3D printed bush, which is probably plenty good, really. That's quite nice. I think we're going to put bronze ones in. And this goes on there like that. Like so. They line up. And then I've made a sacrificial key, which is this little plastic piece with a hole through the centre and two little lobes. That sits in there like that nicely. And that's what drives that gear. So if there is a praying or a problem, that's the shear point there. So that's on there like that. And of course this goes through another gear, or this goes through another bush on the back. And we've got basically a retainer which sits in the end there, nice and flush and neat, so that it doesn't fill up with dirt. That's the theory. And there's then 4 screws in there to basically that's what retains that. So everything's nice and neat there. That's pretty good. And this will still go back in here. I believe that this system here will be, it's got a grub screw here and here, but I believe that this will be quite significantly reworked before we're done. Just looking at it, I would like this sliding collar to be up here on this part of the actual drive linkage rather than down here. A bit bigger diameter won't hurt. So probably we're going to lock that in and use this still as a lock system, like as a 2-positional system. But we're going to make it a bigger diameter up here so that it's actually pushing on this part here to drop it out of gear, rather than pushing on this part back here, which gives us this much closer, and hence that much less flex in the pusher. So that's the idea there. So that's that shaft and how that works. The middle shaft is basically just in 2 bushes there like that. There's still some burrs on that side of that side. It feels like there's a burr on there, so not so bad that way. But we might just fix that. Whatever that is chewing the aluminium up. We'll sort that out. So this has got a bush that side and that side. And in this final one, that's a blind hole, so we're not actually getting any oil egress or dirt ingress through that hole anymore. There's one less place to have to clean out. So the middle one's just like that. It's pretty basic. The outer one's basic too. I put a plastic bush on this. I'm not sure that's going to last. I think it'll get a bronze one on it. And this is quite a reasonable fit in here, and this is quite a good fit in the actual body of the saddle, or of the slide. So I don't believe that this needs a bush in here. This pin and the gap in here is quite a good fit. It's not gonna, there's not going to be any movement here, and there's not going to be any movement coming through here because this bush will stop it here on the lid. That's just got a cross hole, and at the moment I've just got a loose pin in it, but there's a better pin coming, I think. there's just a little roll pin in that, and the other one's got a slot in it just exactly the same. Right, and that's the third gear. Now we've done a little bit of rework here. There's two holes and they're in the right spot, so they actually screw on, and these will need special heads because they're a bit smaller diameter. We've got a little bit close here between these two, this bush and this bolt head. So we're going to need to make two M6 bolts for that, and we're going to need to set the slide up and bore and tap another, drill and tap another hole for this outside hole, and that'll be nice and solid there. This fits nicely in the T-slot or the dovetail. The dovetail fits nicely past here, doesn't scratch it or touch it. So that saddle slide actually comes all the way past there, so it's past the end of the slide, it comes up real close. And this gives a bit of support on here when it's bolted down, it stops this sort of carry on. And this shape makes it very easy and nice to clean out. It fills up the swarf in here. We could just give it a sweep out with a brush. That's the theory there. The lid is just basically machined aluminium. It's got a recess for 4 screws, and I've drilled and tapped that. So basically from that point when it's on and everything's nice and neat, we're probably going to put a good chamfer around here. Finish it all off so the paint sticks to it and it looks good. And the same on this one, I think I'll put a chamfer around here and clean it all up nice. And a bit of a radius clean up. And that way, when we do paint this, the paint will stick to it. So that's what we've got so far, and that's the thinking behind that. Now, if we put this together, I'm very tempted to almost leave these bushes in here, but they're probably not really. We can do better than that. If we put all this together, I leave the centre gear out so it doesn't scratch up. The main reason it's scratching up is that I haven't put a centre bush in that yet. This one on here nicely, and this bolt will need to be shortened a couple of millimetres, I think. But this does actually bolt down or clamp down onto the actual shaft, so everything's tight, and I don't believe anything's going to come undone with a bit of use. So we can put a bolt in there just to line everything up. That's the gearbox as we know it. This is substandard, and I'm going to have a bit of a look around for some more universal joints and probably an extension shaft when I get this on, and I've got some sort of a look at the capabilities. I don't believe this is quite long enough. And find some decent universals or swivel joints here that aren't going to fall apart and haven't got too much backlash in them, and probably a decent spline in between. I believe that I have a source for this particular part. This goes here, and the problem being that if we have a rod on top here to offset this and drop that out, the offset is sort of that much. Bit flexible. Don't like that very much. So I believe that this is going to become bigger diameter, and it's going to move up here. And this piece, which has a, have a look, there's a spring ball in there that works on the actual groove. That's going to be in this body down here, and we'll probably get away with using this part of the clutch again, or we'll make a new one of these and design something that slides over here, and this limit here then will be right up here. And when this comes up to a stop point, we've sort of only coming this far and popping it out, rather than we're 25mm shorter, and that gives us a bit less flex in it. We don't have to be quite as solid with this piece that pops the clutch out. So that's the thoughts behind that, and that's where we're at. Next job is some bushes in this and 2 proper screws for it, and adjust it and screw it all up and get everything running nice and smooth and good. And then we can start thinking about this end, and I haven't really gone as far as to sort this end out either yet, because I'm not as confident as I could be that we're on the right track with this shaft. It's a bit of a fool of a thing. When I did make this, this bush here is basically a round bush with a slot in it and a piece silver soldered on top of it, and then the whole lot's machined up round. Sort of works. Not that much in love with it, and this is just a piece of stainless steel tube that we machined out to put this universal in the end, and it's a piece of square that we machined to fit this bush here. This is all right. Every time you move it out that far, it's got way too much flex in it. Right? The spline would be better, and also it falls off, which is a bit of a pain. You've got to have 2 hands, 3 hands to actually put it all together. So this might be an upgrade on this here next. And from that point we might make the new ends for it and get all that looking pretty good. If you're just coming to this and you're not quite sure what this is part of, and I'm sure there are people who are looking for LORCH thread cutting attachments, and this is what's come up. So if you're that person, we'll have a bit of a look at the thread cutting attachment that I've made and what actually works. So we're 27 minutes into this video. If you can hang on another half hour, we'll have a good look at it. My bench is a little bit limited. This is the thread cutting attachment I've made. Now, this is quite a machine actually. It's got tumblers here, which I've got basically a tumbler system here. I'm not going to take this apart. At some point I will make a video of how it all works. I don't think today is the day to actually pull this apart and put it back together. But it's got a banjo here. These are basically, there's only one gear on this one, but there's a machine ground washer in between, and there's room in this bush here with a key in it for 2 gears. So there's also a spacer bush. So if we only want to get one gear on there, we can basically drop a spacer bush on there, and we've got a mandrel for those gears. This is basically it's a bolt with a slot in the end and nothing else, and that runs nicely in this machine slot on the banjo, so it runs backwards and forwards there beautifully. This one here has a slot on the back too and a hole through, and that goes there. So this doesn't turn. When you do this bolt up nice and tight, or doesn't even need to be tight, but when you do that nut up, that's fixed. And you only need one spanner to move that backwards and forwards. This of course fits the LORCH spanner, so it all works on there. And of course there's enough clearance on this bush so that when you put this together with this in place, I'm going to turn this over so it actually does mesh, and we do this up. There's still enough clearance that that actually turns. It could do as oil, that one, but even when we do that up tight, that bush still spins nicely on that. So that's how that works. And if we slip this off, this one here, of course, is exactly the same. And at this moment it's got an 80 tooth gear and a 50 tooth gear on it. But the same bush, they've got a spacer in between to give them a little bit of space. The spacer washer is basically just like that. It's got a keyway in it, very simple thing, and that works. Basically that runs nicely on there. This one of course locks in the back like that, and the slot keeping it all aligned, and we can tighten that one up too, and so it's all adjustable up and down. It runs. So I pulled this apart a bit, but this is where the magic happens. This piece here is wire EDM cut, and it matches the bed of the lathe nicely without too much machining or anything. It is really nice. This here has a hole in it, this stud, with a cam lock here, the same as the tailstock on the lathe. So this just basically locks it on the T-slot. No string, no nothing, it just locks it up solid on the T-slot in the back of the lathe. So that clamps that down there. Now this here has a bush that's retained with this screw in here, right, just through there. If we have a look at this, this sort of is in two pieces here. We'll slip that bush off. We'll have a look here. So this is adjusted against the quite a lot of head scratching to get this right. But this is adjusted against the spindle height with this eccentric bush. Now it's got a row of holes around it. It's going to move there now. I'm going to tighten that bush up because I don't want it to move. But this bush here, the brass bush, has a row of 8 holes around it. I think it's 8, and a grub screw with a shoulder screw in there. Now I can adjust the offset here by moving that bush around 1/8 of a turn, so quite accurately to change the backlash and the mesh of the gears. So that's the way that works. That just runs basically in that bush. Probably I'm not going to take that out. There's, I believe that to be 2 parts. So this piece here, just from memory, I'd have to look at the drawing, but this piece here is actually screwed in with this bush, and then this stud is in here. So this actually turns, which is also on a bush, I believe. There might be a ball race in here. I can't remember because it's a long time since I pulled this apart. But this one here, to clean up. Right, it goes on here like so. Right. And that's not eccentric, that's a parallel bush that goes in this hole that locates it. Like so. And that gives us the needed offset. And that grub screw there clamps that in place. This turns on the bush, but independent of this shaft here. Are you lost yet? I'm feeling it. Something stuck in one of these gears. They could do with a good clean. They might get a blowout before they go back on. These have bushes in them. In fact, I think they might actually have bearings in them. And a flathead screw. It sits in the shoulder in the bush. And then there's a spacer washer. And basically there's a slot in this piece. So these can be adjusted backwards and forwards to give you the correct dropout here and here. And change the mesh between these two. So basically you move them backwards and forwards. This one here has an adjustable plate on it with this plunger, right, with 3 holes in it, and you can adjust that up and down to change the backlash on this gear here and this one here. So it's all fully adjustable. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but there's a standard 40 tooth gear which gives us this same gear. Put this key back in, like so. Then this gives us the same gear. As we'll see in a minute on the spindle, and that gives us forward and reverse. That's how that works. Generally I drive off this gear, so basically there's another spacer push there, the same as the others, which goes on there, and we can do that one up. And we've got basically a tumbler system which either operates on this one or on this one off the spindle, and that gives us reverse and inside and in the middle. So that's that. This just has a collar on this end and a bush in the middle and the keyway there, little oiler there for that bush here, plunger oiler, and this whole assembly is in here with a grub screw in the bottom. This of course is the right size for this banjo, which is just 10mm plate that we cut out with the slots in it and a lightning hole for effect and some shape on it. It does really need a bit of a clean up, but that just goes on there like that. It clamps down, see? So that's pretty solid there. It's a 42 here, and if you run a set of idlers through here to here, what we've got is a basic lead screw that runs at the same speed as the spindle, so 40 to 40 to 40 with idlers, things like that. So we'll leave that one on because that was the one we were using last, and there was one of these on here. we don't have to put a second gear on it. Go clean up too. Right. And that one screws down too. All these nuts are interchangeable, of course. This one here we can put back on here. Don't know if any of them were actually doing anything. It's probably just on here. And as we go, we made sure all these gears line up. So basically this way. They're all in mesh. Not going to go into using this or meshing this or anything else while we're having this video, just as basic. So this is all back on. This is basically how it all works. You see it all turning over there. I've just roughly meshed these, and we've got 40 to 40, 40 to 40, 40 TPI to 40 TPI to 40 TPI. Gives us exactly 1 to 1 here as reversed. So if we switch this over, we've got 1 to 1 speed here and here. Not particularly useful for anything unless you're running 2mm pitch spring or something like that. But that's how that works. This here basically locks it. There's a if we slip this off, we can see a T-slot at the bottom here, just this long, which is just long enough to attach this on there. That goes up against there. We can lock that down there or that way out of the way. So this of course is adjusted beautifully on this eccentric. These two here are adjusted against this gear to operate properly, so that this one's got clearance and this one doesn't. And then the eccentric gear is used to lift this up and down. And this gear's on the banjo, so it doesn't really matter very much where we connect it. As such. So that's how that works. There will be a guard over here, and probably 2 studs with a nut on each one, or a thumb screw, or some sort of system there sticking out. One here somewhere. There'll be a stud here somewhere, and a stud in here. And these will have basically a guard on here, which will be a little bit ornate probably, with basically a ledge around here to keep your fingers out of those gears, and down around here and over the top here, and probably I don't think this wants to sit out very much more than about there. So whether we actually make this that sort of shape, need to fiddle with that a bit more. work out where that's going to go. This also needs to be nicely finished, and everything needs to be finished off and everything working nicely. But that's how that goes. The gearbox, of course, goes on here. Nice and neat like that, and then this one here stretches out and goes on here. And just to hold all that in place. Gives us some idea how that works. There will be a guard on here next with a electronic device here. We will have a bit of a look at that at some point. Might be another video, but that's the thread cutting attachment so far. As you can see, it's a pretty involved device, and there's a lot of it's sort of a work in progress. These are actually just eBay gears which are available cheaply. Some of them I've cut, some of them are 3D printed. There's a big stack of them. I would probably, if I did it again, I would 3D print all their spaces in ABS or something like that, and I will at some point cut all these wheels, make some nice wheels. These parts are from Leslie Gartner, a German company. This one's actually pretty nice because you can adjust it there, and this one's just a ball plunger. So as you can see, this is a work in progress. I've already said that, and I can't emphasize that enough. We're still working on this. I'd very much like to see it finished at some point in the future. I'd like a box for it, and a box for all the change gears to keep all the dirt out of it, so I can take this off here when I'm not using it, or when I want to use the space for something else, or when I start the next attachment. I'd like a nice wooden box to put all this in with all the gears and everything else. But at this point, this gearbox will probably stay on here indefinitely. All this will go in the box. Anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. There will be more videos coming out about this. There will be more videos about all sorts of things, full-size steam and model engines, etc, etc, etc. But a few people have asked about particulars of this, so here's the video. Appreciate you watching, and hope it wasn't too long-winded, and I hope I didn't get too enthusiastic and off topic too many times. But appreciate it, and more soon, guys and girls. Be kind to each other.